Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Kellogg College. My name's David Howard. I'm a fellow of the college and a co-director of the Global Centre on Healthcare and Urbanisation. And the GCHU has been running these seminars, these public seminars, for several years now, generally once a term. And we try to choose a topic that is relevant to a local issue, a national and a global issue. And this week, for this one, and also the next seminar on the 30th of April, we're looking at issues of housing and planning. So those of you who've been looking at the news beyond global international news will realise that housing policy and planning policy have been a key issue nationally, but also locally. There's been a lot of written about Oxfordshire's housing challenge. So we've chosen a good topic, and we've also chosen 4 excellent speakers. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. There's Graham Larson, who is the Associate Dean and Head of Sustainability at the University College and Estate Management. There's Meggie Zala, who is a researcher at King's Foundation and the University of College and Estate Management. There's Jeff Anderson, who's a CEO of Anderson Contractors, representing the SME voice for builders in Oxfordshire, and also the Southern Director of the Federation of Master Builders. And it's Anna Strongman, who's the CEO of Oxford University Development, leading on the Begbrook development, and also was very much involved as a financial lead on the King's Cross Central development in London. So we have, I'd say, an excellent range of speakers, but I'm biased, who look at issues of sustainable supply chains, housing planning, and particularly SME roles in construction, and just looking at issues of urban development and housing. So the idea for this seminar really stemmed a wee while ago, actually last year, when the GCHU, we had six excellent research interns who were students at the university. Rebecca, Helena, Cynthia, Yassine, Erica and Matthew, who were working with us to do some evidence-based research about the viability of really looking at regional building hubs in terms of sustainable supply chains, working with local labour, local resources, as a way of maybe the smaller scale approach to answering the housing issues today, and focus on regional economies, on the idea that many state economies or national economies has emerged from the local strengths of regions. So that was really the idea behind this. The report was published with the King's Foundation as part of the Building a Legacy series, and as it launched in September at Elsick House. It's all online. There's one paper copy here, so you can fight over it if you want. But this was the idea, to bring together a discussion. And as ever, we have asked 4 speakers. Graham will be leading the choir, discordant otherwise tonight, to pitch their ideas, and there's time for you to ask questions. And then, as ever, there is drinks and nibbles afterwards at around 6:30 or so. So thank you all for joining us. I'll now hand over to Graham. Over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, David. Good evening, everybody. I'm really thrilled to be here, and I do kind of have 2 roles. I want to say some things about the topic, but I'm also, as I've said to David, we're co-chairing, I think is the phrase we decided on. So I'm an academic at University College of Estate Management, but I'm also a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Building. So I'm a builder as well. So I've worked in the industry. Associate Dean for Sustainability. I've been interested in regions and regional networks of firms around kind of housing and the built environment sector for a number of years. And I've done quite a bit of work with small regional firms, some from Oxford actually, over in the past, about how they've remained competitive in the changing landscape, which is a very, very difficult thing for them. I think maybe, as David alluded, we've currently got some, UCM's currently got some research going with the King's Foundation around regional building hubs, which Meggie will be talking about. And we're also doing some stuff with the UK Green Building Council around similar topics. Before I introduce the speakers, though, I just want to use this platform to just maybe offer a couple of touch points to maybe steer the discussion a little bit, or the debate, I suppose, if that's okay. The elephant in the room, first of all, I think housing, building communities, building healthy communities, and the housing crisis are all topics that people feel very passionately about. People might have different interests, they might come from different demographics, etc. But we've all got a particular view on it. And I think that's important. It's important to kind of recognise the emotive nature of the topic. And probably that will come across in the debate today. But whether we're talking about new buildings in places we might not like, or we do like, or new developments, or retrofitting, or repurposing things, it's a very complex area, which I think is worth just noting before we start. I'd then like to say something maybe a little bit more provocative. If David just mentioned kind of the news at the moment, and if you think about the current rhetoric, the fact that we need, 1.4 million new homes, or million new units, as they're often called, okay? I think that is quite an interesting starting point. And there's certainly debate around whether currently we have a number of empty homes, even close to that figure, which could be repurposed in some way, okay? So there's currently a debate about what needs to be built as in a new thing and what could be repurposed, etc., depending on which statistics you look at. But the point I wanted to make was, who maybe in this room actually wants to live in a unit? Who wants to live in a building that is conceptualized and measured in terms of units? I don't personally, okay? And I think the people in the room here, certainly the presenters, and certainly the work that we're doing, we tend to think in terms of offering a different narrative. We tend to think in terms of building a healthy, sustainable community with a sense of place to it, as David has described. And I think that belonging and that place is really important for us. And there's obviously societal benefits that spin off from that. And we can see those. So shifting that narrative, I think, is quite important. The other touch point, if I can, and this is the final one, I think, is the notion of regions, what we mean by those, okay? Maggie's just published some work around how we can conceptualize a region. It's open to debate, isn't it? You could conceptualize it about the infrastructure we have in particular places, maybe around the natural geology, maybe around the architectural styles, maybe around, other natural resources that we have around water, or even the governance and planning restrictions and institutions that we have. All of those things shape how we define a region. For me personally, and my interests in my work, the regions are about a network of localized firms in a space, okay? And understanding how they can work competitively and perhaps move and develop how they work to do things a little bit better. And also how they can respond to the changing kind of demands of society, as David has just alluded to. How they can be more competitive and kind of deliver this better world and better placemaking, etc. Okay. So I could go on, but I think I probably need to let some other people speak. So I'll stop there, and I'd like to invite Maggie up as our first speaker. Thank you, Maggie. There we go.
Hi, everyone. I would like to thank you, Dr. David, for the invite. I feel really honored to be here. Just to introduce briefly the Regional Building Hub research project. It's a 2 years research project funded by Innovate UK, and it's a collaboration between University College of Estate Management and the King's Foundation. I don't want to probably dig so much into the project and go into details to make it more complex. It's already quite complex, the industry itself. I would like initially to introduce what the problem is and what kind of housing we actually need and what can be the solution and what the Regional Building Hub can bring to the discussion today. So we all need somewhere to live, but right now housing in the UK is not working for many people. It has become expensive, disconnected, and too often it's poorly planned. Owning a house is becoming unaffordable by many, and even when homes are built, they are not always solving the problem. Probably most of us have already walked through a new housing development and thought, where are the shops? Where is the community? Where is the sense of place? Or who designed this? We do question these things when clearly things are not fully working. Why is everyone driving and why there is no parking space? New homes often lack characters, especially services, adaptability, future-proofing, and the all-important sense of place. Instead of tackling issues, many of us, like builders, developers, planners, including also every stakeholder possible, are repeating the same mistakes over and over, creating isolated estates where people have to drive for everything, where local business can thrive, a limited number of business do exist, and where infrastructure like school and healthcare can't keep up. But what kind of housing we do actually need? More housing alone won't fix the problem, and we need to keep in mind that the 1.5 million new houses comes with a high risk. We need the right houses in the right places, built by the right people. Walkable communities, place where you can walk to school, to shop and work, instead of the need for car to go everywhere. Locally sourced material, cutting carbon emission and supporting local jobs should be one of the main characteristics that we need to look for. Connected communities with streets where kids can play, where neighborhoods where neighbors meet, and where small businesses can thrive and run, its priority. Green spaces and infrastructure. Housing that does not just add pressure for school and hospitals, but actually improve the existing infrastructure. It's quite challenging to understand and change someone's perspective, and starting from the landowners is quite important for them to not see the investment as a quick short-term benefits, but the long-term community building should be at the key. The reality is that we know how to build better places. Places that show that we plan well, people want to live there, and home that keep their values. But what aren't we doing right? Actually, what is stopping us from building better places? If we know the problem and we know the solution, why is this not happening? Short-term thinking is one of the key issues that we are facing, and starting from the land, where landowners often sell quickly, often due to risk, complexity, and the unknown, rather than investing in long-term communities. Disconnected planning, where new houses are built without through amenities, where school, healthcare, or public transport might be inexistent or distant from these new developments. We have to keep in mind that planning should solve problems instead of creating new ones. Big developers dominate controlling land and building, and the same generic estate everywhere. They are shaping the discourse to their capabilities and their metric. And today that we are talking, the big developers count for more than 90% of what is built in the UK, while 30 years ago, they were counting for only 40%. So this is quite alarming, and some support and some focus should be given to the local SMEs at regional level at the same time. Local builders are locked out and struggle to compete, even though they might have more local knowledge to deliver better places. Instead of creating communities where people can walk or cycle, we build estates that do force car ownership, and where car is king and you are on the way. Instead of repeating the same mistake, we need a new approach. One that supports local businesses, strengthen local regional economies, and create places where people actually want to live, not just being forced to live. A regional approach should be, and based on the regional building hub, we believe that gives power to local solutions. Just responding to the question, to the topic of the seminar itself. But the solution is not just more housing. It is about how we build, who builds, and where we are actually building. Or perhaps, as Dr. Graham mentioned, the solution might not be just new housing either. We need a regional approach, regions with networking of firms that know their own needs best. What is right in Oxford is not the same as what can be right in Newcastle or Bristol. So textualizing the region is quite important. SMEs can build better if we let them. So some support is particularly needed at this stage. It is quite critical to put the focus and to have a healthier economy as well. Landowners must think long term instead of selling for quick profits. They can invest in communities that hold their values over generation and not short term. Walkability matters, and Panbury, for example, has proven that mixed use, pedestrian friendly places retain values and create thriving communities. Today that we are talking, I didn't want to talk about numbers, which we usually tend to talk about, but for instance, Panbury is home to 207 businesses today and employs 2,300 people, mainly locals, which is quite important, and today contributes to Dorset local economy over £100 million per annum in GVA. We can prioritize people over profit, as I mentioned, build homes that support local economies and create places that feel like home, not just houses and numbers. So how do we make this a reality? That is what the Regional Building Hub research project comes in. Helping local developers accessing land is and funding is one of the main objectives of the initiative. Planning with communities for not just houses, ensuring new development comes with schools, shops, green spaces, and all the necessary amenities to not put pressure to the existing ones. Strengthening local economies, supporting regional materials, businesses, and skills. And it's quite important when we talk about funding, prioritizing stewardship over quick profit, encouraging landowners to invest in long-term values, not just short-term values. And the King's Foundation has the widest network of landowners in the UK, which counts for around 40% of land. So we are really trying to do the impossible to promote this new model of long-term investment. RBH is not just housing, is not just another housing initiative, and that's how it's starting as a research project to make sure that we have all the evidence based to build upon. It is a framework for action, helping local builders, landowners, and planners work together to create, together with the community, better places that thrive. But why this matter to you? This is not just about the industry, about the industry and professionals. It's about you, it's about me, about our home, about the community, our future and our children's future as well. Better homes means more sustainable energy efficiency and build to last. Strengthen local economy is essential, keeping jobs and investment within your town instead of sending profits elsewhere. Better communities can support healthy living and better education. Walkable streets, green spaces, and local amenities means better physical and mental well-being. Well-planned houses reduce the hidden cost of commuting, heating bills, poor infrastructure, bringing affordable living at the same time. Where do we go from here? I think it's important that we need to rethink the housing at this stage and remember that it is less about numbers, more about the quality, the sustainability, community and collaboration. That is what the Regional Building Hub is working towards. Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie. That's fantastic. Really interesting. If we could skip on to Jeff and invite Jeff to come up, that would be fantastic. I think if I move that on, we can leave that one there. No, we'll skip to the next one, I think. No, we'll go back. Yeah, let's go back to here. There we go. Jeff, please. Careful.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. My name's Jeff Anderson. I'm Managing Director of Anderson Contractors Limited. We build new build homes, new build eco homes. This year we're building 4. We usually build 1 or 2, so it's a big year for us this year. I'm also the president of the regional president of the Federation of Master Builders. And just to introduce the FMB, reading from their leaflet, the Federation of Master Builders is the largest trade association in the UK construction industry. So we represent an awful lot of builders. And it's quite difficult to get in. The members are independently inspected, professionally vetted, and we turn quite a lot of applications down. So for SME builders, the FMB, through the FMB, we sort of feel we're doing it the right way. A few sort of telling statistics, I think a couple of them we've just touched on. 40 years ago in this country, 40% of houses were built by small builders. Now it's less than 10%. The government wants, if you divide out their requirement for new build homes, it works out as £300,000, 300,000 homes per year, and the last year that was done was 1969, which is the year I was born. It's an awful long time ago, and so another stat is in 2022, only 5,500 social homes were built in this country, and yet there are 1.25 million people on social housing lists, which is clearly another massive gap. The FMB carries out surveys 4 times a year, speaking to members who build new build homes. This year they've carried one out, and the headlines from that: 76% of us home builders say that the biggest problem is the planning system. There's also a lot of talk of lack of viable land and lack of available land, which obviously are similar but different. The cost of national regulation as well, particularly the new biodiversity net gain regulations, which the development we're working on at the moment, the biodiversity net gain legislation came in while we were in the planning process and added a huge amount of time and money to our application, and as yet no one quite seems to understand how it works. We've got material costs, which are very volatile, with difficulty with finance, which often is directly related to the planning process because you don't know what you're going to get. Mortgage availability equally is a problem, again largely down to the planning issue. Now, of course, tonight we're talking about the regional effects. I mean, by definition, SME builders, we are regional. We are local. My son and I, we're building these 4 houses very close, about 100 metres from home. That really is regional. But, and all of our suppliers are local. All of our subcontractors are local. Just down the road from us, 4,000 houses have been built by big developers. So we are just south of the M4, near Reading. The ground workers came from the south coast. The brickwork contractors came from the other side of Wiltshire. Is nothing regional about it. The carbon footprint, and plus the quality of the build is shocking. I mean, from the FMB, from the survey we've done, the solutions that the Federation have come up with are having SME developer forums with local authority planning. Now, how easy that will be, I don't know. Specific SME planning teams within local authorities. Again, it sounds like a great idea. Planning teams need to communicate more effectively. I mean, for where we're working at the moment, we had about a dozen different planning deadlines. The local authority didn't hit a single one. One of them they put back 6 times, a month or 2 at a time. So, and all of the availability of land, the availability of finance. But to me, the whole issue is about planning, because if we get the planning right, then all of the other things will fall into place beyond it. Things like the finance. If you go to the bank and say, I've bought a piece of land, I don't know how long the planning is going to take, you're not going to get your finance. Whereas if there's a better set of rules within it, I think it can work. But as I say, to my mind, the planning process is utterly broken now, and to get the small guys involved, that has to be what's fixed first. And thank you for that, and I will happily take any questions later on.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Yeah, I'm sure there will be some questions for you later on, don't worry. Anna, if I could invite you up, thank you.
Hello everyone, thanks very much for inviting me here today. I'm Anna Strongman, I'm a commercial property developer, and I thought I'd talk to you from the perspective of a practitioner, and why I think locally led development can have environmental and social economic benefits. It can have benefits to the developer themselves in terms of their commercial returns. And all of that, I think, can support better housing to be delivered and more housing to be delivered. Now, I do believe in locally led development. My career has been based on that approach. So for 20 years, I worked on the development at King's Cross. And as a business agent, we were based on the development, and we moved in as one of the early tenants, and we were very closely involved in the day-to-day life of that development. And I also I moved to King's Cross, so I lived just north of the site off York Way, so I was part of the wider community. I'm now running a joint venture between the university and Legal & General, and we are looking to build more homes and more commercial space across Oxford in 7 sites, including a new village up at Begbrook and a new urban quarter at Oasley Mead. And I have moved to Oxford, I live in Oxford, my team is based in Oxford. So again, we are part of the community that we are building in, and I think that has real benefits to our approach. So some of the examples of why I think it helps developers to be based locally. I think it helps you to understand the locality and your customer. I think it informs your approach to design, to delivery, to management. I think it helps you build stronger relationships with your customers and with your potential tenants and your potential residents. I think you can build more effective local partnerships. At King's Cross, we built a very effective long-term partnership with a local community group called Global Generation, who were based up the road in Kentish Town, and I worked with them within the community and on the development. I think being based locally gives you better market knowledge. You understand the nature of the sites coming to the market. You are sometimes privy to off-market deals, which is, a good thing. I think you have a better understanding of local politics. You have a broader understanding of the issues. For example, since I've lived in Oxford, I've definitely developed a wide understanding of the traffic concerns of all residents and businesses in this city. I think you have a stake in the wider success of the community that you're developing in. So you want the wider community to thrive for commercial reasons, because a thriving community, a thriving economy sees better results for your own investment and development. But also for the relationships that you build. I think you have more credibility, you can build more trust with local stakeholders, and that's because I think if you are based in the area you develop in, you effectively have more implicit accountability and responsibility for your actions through your development. A good example of that is Muse, who are a developer which started in the Northwest, very successful developer, and they, through their local relationships, have built a very successful business there. I think if you have multiple projects in one place, it enables you to have a longer term view, and you can invest in longer term programs across different projects. For example, we're looking at how we can develop a place-based employment and local skills approach in Oxford through our developments. I think a local and a regional focus means you're also more invested in the performance of the region. So you're more committed to working with local stakeholders to lobby for improvements, for example, to transport, to infrastructure, to supporting your local authority partners deliver for the wider region. And I think if you are just in and out of a place, you have less interest in supporting those wider initiatives. I don't think it's always easy. I think you can be a local-based developer who ignores all the potential benefits. So you definitely have to have the right attitude. I'm not going to stand up here and defend everyone in the development industry. I've heard plenty of people say to me, why should I be responsible for social engineering? Why should I take on the role of the state? Why is it my job? My job is to make profits. So I think there is opportunity, but it does need the right attitude in the developer. I think if you're based in one place, there's a danger of becoming quite inward looking. And I think you always have to challenge yourselves to look beyond the boundaries of where you're working and learn from others. I think it can be personally challenging. I've been in the queue in M&S in Summertown many a time when someone who I've been consulting with is just behind me, adding some helpful comments to the consultation process. But I think that is part and parcel of living and working in the same place. I think perhaps most importantly, it's harder to diversify and spread the risk as a developer and investor in one region and one locality. And I think that has to be borne in mind about the risk and the vulnerability of your investments if they're just in one area. I think part and parcel of being a locally based developer is the use and partnership with local supply chains. I think it can be very beneficial to use local partners. It provides feedback into the local economy, spend, employment, building local economic and social capital. You also get the benefit of local knowledge, of a lower cost base often, and of responsiveness in your partners. I think those partners can often have the same depth of commitment to the community that you can have. I think you can work together on joint place-based programs around employment and training, for example. And I think the role of SMEs is important. I think the government has recognised that in a lot of their recent commentary. And that has the benefit of generating more competition. It's important in our house building market where we do have quite a limited number of very large players to bring in more competition. I think they can disrupt the market and they can create more economic resilience. So I think working with SMEs is very important. And for the developer, it creates more variety in your product. It creates more competition for your land, so you can see commercial benefits as well. I don't think it's challenge-free. I think sometimes locally based supply chains don't always have the depth of skill and the covenant strength that you may need. And I think we need to recognise that and work out if there are ways of addressing that. And again, it's the depth of best practice and how to ensure that collectively we're always looking outwards as well as going deep locally. But I certainly think that if you can go forward and see the benefits of working locally and working with partners locally, then you can build those wider benefits. You can drive commercial returns. And all of that is important to housing because we have to build a broader consensus that we need to develop more housing. And we're only going to do that if we can build very attractive, resilient, thriving communities. And we also need to build demand for our housing. So the more successful our places are as commercial developers, the more demand we'll have for the developers that we deliver. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Anna. That was great. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Meggie. I think you'd agree there's three very interesting presentations there, slightly different perspectives. I think we'll open the floor up to questions. Yeah, we've got 20 minutes or so. So any questions from the floor, please? Please, yeah. Oh, we've got a microphone for you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming here. It's great to have you. I literally live in one of these houses, so it's great to have this in the backyard. I have a specific question to Maggie. You mentioned that we have to make the case for long-term investments instead of sacrificing a little bit of the short-term gains. Wouldn't there be a business case where if you're building enough dense housing and with mixed-use development, it would be actually more profitable to build this even in the short term because you're selling commercial property and you're selling more houses, even though it's probably lower rate. Why do we have to sacrifice short-term gains where if we're building more, if we're building better, shouldn't it be the other way around?
I think there are enough examples in which the short-term thinking hasn't been very successful, and the King's Foundation has been working for more than 30 years in these type of models, and which has proved to be very beneficial. And therefore, having these bad examples and these new housing model, consortium models that have been working with a focus on community building, I think it's important. So we have done like a full research in comparing different case studies, and there are enough evidence to support why this model is beneficial.
Does Jeff or Anna want to comment as well, perhaps? Because it's quite a broad topic, I think, about the short.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges we've got on bigger developments is the cost of the infrastructure versus the timing of the returns from the built development. So a good example is at King's Cross, which is a major mixed-use development. At one point, we have built 85% of the infrastructure, which is all sunk costs, and we had only built 30% of the built environment. So if you think of 85% cost out and only 30% of the returns back, that creates a real requirement for a long-term commitment of your cash. And it took, King's was just about to finish, it's 25 years to drive those returns. And it was worth it there because the scale and the market was in favour of that development, but it could easily have gone the other way. So I think it's the infrastructure burden on significant projects, and the requirement for high quality infrastructure to deliver the quality of these developments that we'd all like to see, that is one of the challenges. So when a house builder takes on a site, they're very focused on how they can match the infrastructure spend with the receipts from the housing, and that doesn't always mean that the social infrastructure, for example, is delivered at the right time to build the communities.
Jeff, did you want to come in or no? Okay, I could just say something on that as well. I think I agree with what Anna and Maggie have said. The challenge is having the planning model and the innovative financial tools to separate what's above the ground and what's below the ground. And currently, there's work being done to do that, because they almost need different models to be able to do it. And so it's an interesting thing. There's a initiative called the Stewardship Initiative, which is looking at that very stuff. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you all for speaking with us. I had a question that's probably most closely connected to Maggie's presentation, but I think was a theme throughout. And so one perspective I have, I think this is certainly true in the US where I come from, but I see it here too, is that we ask housing to do a lot of different things. We ask housing to be a commodity. We ask it often to be an asset. We ask it to be architecturally significant. I noticed that, Maggie, that in your speech about trying to build communities, trying to build place, trying to encourage small and medium enterprises and development. And so my question is not whether those are not independently laudable goals. My question, though, is whether those are competing goals, and whether by imposing all of these different expectations on housing, we get in the way of the ultimate delivery of it. And so when I think about something like the housing crisis, to me as a young person who pays way too much on rent, what I think is that housing is way too expensive. Not first and foremost that I do not live in a sufficiently socially connected place. And whether we really need to be prioritizing the delivery of the housing before we can think, especially from a planning standpoint, about the other goals.
Thank you. That's a really good question. I rent in London, so I totally understand your position. I think this housing target, as I mentioned, has come with a very high risk because we have to think quantity over quality, and beyond achieving just a target, we have to aim for something beyond that. So I think that is quite important to build a community and just not just a soulless town or without any community, nothing happening there, car dependent and so on, without generating any business out of it, any other income. So I think surely we might not exclude that other model. I do believe that there should be two different models, absolutely, but not just focusing on numbers. Why not to be two different models to balance also the housing crisis and housing prices at the same time? But we should think long term. So yeah, keeping the balance is key. Thank you.
Thanks. I understand about the rents and buying houses. I hate to say the same thing, but if the planning process was more transparent and more easily approached at the beginning, then a lot of the costs of planning and therefore construction could come down, which would bring down the rental costs, house purchase costs, without significantly affecting the profits of the developers. If we had an easy plan going forwards and we didn't have changes in legislation, changes in local authority plans coming up, which just throw more spanners in the works and take longer. So if the planning process was better, it would reduce those costs. Yeah.
I think that is such a good question. Brilliant. I think it's quite nuanced, actually. I think the planning system is asking the developers, the house builders to deliver a lot. So we're delivering affordable housing, which used to be built by local authorities. We are paying for investment in transport infrastructure. We're paying for investment often in open playground, lots of different sort of bits of social infrastructure, new schools, for example, and the infrastructure itself. And you could say, is that the right thing? Should the development industry be delivering those kind of public goods, or should they be taxed and then the public sector do it? There's lots of different models for that. I'd have two responses. One, I do think it's important to think about building balanced local communities, and there are a number of studies which have been done on new communities. Cambourne is an example in Cambridge, where the social infrastructure wasn't provided and there were high levels of mental health issues because the place hadn't been properly planned, and that has ongoing cost implications for the public sector, etc. So I think there are good reasons to invest in building resilient communities and places which are properly served by social infrastructure. I think the second point, I think even if you stripped all those requirements out, I'm not sure the house prices would plummet. I think land values would probably go up, and I think that house prices are influenced by a wide range of things, and I think that supply frankly is sometimes manipulated to maintain headline prices, and that's being said by a commercial developer, and it's also fueled by mortgage rates and the availability of credit. So it's quite a complex issue, headline housing prices, and I'm not sure just stripping out all the requirements on developers would naturally see those benefits passed on to the consumer.
Okay, if I could just jump in as well. I think the issue of risk is really important, where the risk is within the very complex network. And as both Jeff and Anna alluded to, where that is perhaps at the moment not in the right place, which means that things tend to be expensive. From my privileged position stood here, I see the academics in this space as being custodians of the built environment. And what we build today will be here in another 100 to 400 years, perhaps, who knows? Look at the university here, another 1,000 years. So all of us are kind of using bits of the built environment for short periods of time, and then it goes to another custodian who'll look after it, and another custodian. And it's trying to shift that mindset, which I know doesn't help you in the short term, but there must be a balance that's better than where we are now, I think. And that's what we're searching for. Yeah. Chap here, and then maybe at the front.
Hi there. My question is sort of aimed at Jeff, but feel free to chime in, everyone. A recent sort of focus or like aspiration in the planning system has been design coding. The hope being that site or district-based design code can streamline planning by providing a clear set of parameters that local authorities are looking for. My question is kind of, where do you see the role of design codes in possibly helping provide more of that certainty that you were looking for from the planning system, and also curbing bigger house builders and supporting more local building?
I think design codes is a great idea, because it, as it stands at the moment, for a small developer, we buy a site, ours are generally brownfield, and we have to think, well, what can we do with this? We're not given a steer at all by the local authority. So the design code would be, not only would it be make it better for the small builder, but it also would bring what they used to call joined up thinking to any other developments in that area, to say, well, this is the kind of thing we're looking for in this area. The site we're working on at the moment, our initial application was to put a pair of semis up the frontage as affordable housing. We thought that was perfectly logical and would fit the plan. The local authority said, oh no, it's all big houses around there, we don't want a pair of semis, you'll just have to pay more sill, which makes not a lot of difference in the outgoing on the site, but a design code would have been perfect for that. So I think it's a really good idea. Yeah. Anyone?
I think design codes are a really good idea. I think they can drive the quality of the developments, but I think they need to be applied in quite a nuanced way. I think they have to be set in a way which allows house builders to do what they are good at, which is actually building very efficiently. So you want design codes which can bring out the best of the house builders, but also contribute to the quality of the overall space. And that's quite an art. And I think one of our challenges is there aren't enough people who really understand that ability of getting the best out of the house builders, and setting the right level of framework to do that.
Thank you. I think it's absolutely a good idea, and in terms of the time that an SME might take through a planning process, can take just the same as a big builder in trying to get a permit for 100 houses. So that comes also like with a higher risk and cost for an SME. So I absolutely believe that it's a good way to go, and the King's Foundation has been working on different design code projects, and one of the aims of the Regional Building Hub is also to create a chassis or group of design codes elements that can be then adapted regionally and speed the planning process within our network of stakeholders.
Okay, I think there was a question down the front here, which might be the last question, possibly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the answers we're getting coming from you. I like the idea of local focus, obviously, on everything. And I agree with Jeff that the planning system is broken. I'm a very old planner, by the way. But the question is, how do you change it? And the one thing that none of you have mentioned is the law and the legal system and lawyers. And that's my problem. I'd like to know what you think of that.
Okay, who would like to take that on?
Which bit of the lawyers?
Planning, the bit that affects planning.
Yeah. Yes, as I completely agree. I don't want to jump on a high horse here, but not only the bit that affects planning, but when we're selling houses as well, the delays always come with the lawyers, always. So yes, I completely agree, but I have no idea how you fix that. I wish I did, because I'd try, but I really don't know how it's done. Maybe Anna, you've got more.
There's a bit of a perverse incentive built into our planning system that the longer the planning negotiations go on, the higher the legal fees seem to go. But I think there's a general commentary on have we got the right level of regulation, which is focused on achieving the right outcomes, and the more regulation which is put in place, the more enforcement is required and the more kind of legalese sits around that. I think the government's announcement, Matthew Pennycook's statement this week on statutory consultees, if anyone has read that, is very interesting, because I think there has been a problem in the planning system with the role of statutory consultees for quite a long time now. They all have very important roles in protecting their own areas of interest, but are they really focusing their resources on the right areas? And the government is very intent on ensuring that that focus is correct. We've spent many hours arguing over technical matters and paying more and more legal and consultancy fees on issues which are actually irrelevant to the overall development. So I think it's a welcome commentary, and I think the government is aware of trying to ensure that where we really do need to focus, that we have the right resources in place and the right spotlight on those issues.
Okay.
Just seems easy to blame the planners, that's all I can say.
Yeah. I think from the stuff we've been doing at UCM with the King's Foundation, we have stakeholders, as Maggie showed on her slide, from all different parties. So trying to get real representation. So we're not doing the silo thinking, and there's legal representation there. And for me, that what always seems to come out of the meetings is the legal and the finance. We need better, innovative ways of doing stuff that fit the problems of today. The legal and the planning and even some of the financial models that we have are quite dated. They need to be brought up to date. Somebody needs to shake those up. So that's a good point.
If I can interrupt, I think there's something about promoting a kind of culture of can do, and instead of having lots of people who say no, it's like how actually can we make this happen? And that doesn't mean making very poor quality development happen or riding roughshod over kind of key critical issues in the environment, for example. But we have got into a bit of a culture of let's just say no. And again, I think the government is very aware of how can we start to promote a positive problem-solving approach to building more houses, as opposed to just, it's a lot easier to say no than it is to say yes.
Okay, I think it's 6:30. I think we'll have to draw things to a close. I'd just like to just kind of offer a couple of thoughts. I think there's a real common voice in the room. Yeah, we can do better. Certainly there are challenges. Certainly we need to look at how the bits fit together. But there's a will to actually do better, and certainly the timing, as David alluded to, with the current government announcements, etc., and identifying skill shortages and so on is really important for us. So I'd like to thank Maggie, Jeff and Anna and all of you. Thank you for your questions. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. Well, we have food and nibbles as always afterwards. We also, I mean, this is in some ways is part one of our focus on housing. We'll try and get a legal representative to provide that the other voice on the 30th of April. So we'll be looking at the climate crisis in some ways, but also the housing crisis. I think we're working closely with Oxfordshire Community Land Trust. So you're all welcome. Do come along. I would also like to thank all our Kellogg staff here who make it all work. And I won't say individual names, but you all know who you are. And also Education Media Services, always here filming away. So you'll be able to watch it online with all the other seminars over the last few years. So I would like to say especially thank you to Graham, Maggie, Jeff and Anna. One of the key aspects of the Global Centre on Healthcare is that we focus on evidence-based research. And I think you'll agree tonight that our speakers certainly know their stuff and you provide an excellent discussion. And I encourage you all to question further over your orange wine, etc. So thank you all and have a good rest of Eve.